Hey everyone, you're watching DeProgram for Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. I'm Ted Rall, and that right there is John Kiriakou.
Hi everybody, welcome back.
So it's good. It's good to be back. Another boring week in the news. Nothing going on much in Washington. No chaos. Everything's boring and calm.
There's so many things that I'm angry about, Although maybe we should start with the good news.
Okay, let's do that.
You remember 2 weeks ago, Benjamin Netanyahu came to Washington. He practically got on his knees and begged Donald Trump to please bomb Iran. And to his credit, Trump, like every previous president before him over the last 40 years, said, no, we're not going to bomb Iran. But anyway, did more than that and began to engage the Iranians in talks. Now, those talks, as we reported here, were indirect for the most part. And they took place in Muscat. The Iranians were in one conference room, the Americans were in another conference room, and the Omani foreign minister was shuttling between the two conference rooms. At the end of the talks, both delegations got together. They took a picture. Everybody gave very tentative thumbs up. So, meaning nobody ran screaming from the room. They agreed to meet again this past Saturday in Rome. The Omani foreign minister flew to Rome. He shuttled back and forth for a little while. Then the delegations decided, let's just meet face to face. They did that. They met face to face. I was far more interested in the Iranian statement at the end of it than in the American statement. The Iranian foreign minister said that the Americans came here with the right attitude. The Americans treated us with respect, and there may be a deal to be made.
Fantastic.
Now, when was the last time you heard that?
Never.
Ever.
Never.
And so these talks are going to continue. Now, if you look at the Iranian press, it's universally positive. We're not getting a lot of coverage here in the United States. I'm not exactly sure why that is. But the Iranian press is all over this, and they're thinking, oh my God, this may turn into something good. So I think that is amazing news to start the week with.
It's really good.
What does good mean?
Good. Like what's obviously the best case scenario is normalization of diplomatic relations.
Yes, which were severed in 1979.
Americans can all travel to Iran and do some tourism. Iranians can come here, do some tourism, cultural exchanges. That would be great. I mean, are we going to get there?
I don't know. But frankly, knowing what I now know about Iran, that would benefit the United States more than it would benefit Iran. Look, in terms of sanctions, there's nothing that the Iranians need that they can't get from the Russians, the Indians, or the Chinese. They have great trade relations with all three of those countries, and anything they need, they can get it.
It's been so long.
It's been so long. They've just worked around
they have money.
Sanctions. Yes, they do.
Money solves all problems.
You remember when Barack Obama was president, for a brief period, he lifted import restrictions on pistachios, Persian carpets, and some other silly thing. It was like cigars or some stupid thing like that. And it was, hailed as this new day in relations between the United States and Iran. It's different now. It's different. I have there's a person that I'm close to who is a regular traveler to Iran. And she tells me, and not just tells me, but she sends me photos and videos that they lack for nothing. And whatever they couldn't buy on the international market, they manufactured themselves. So it would be far more of a benefit to the United States, besides forcing a lower international oil price or global oil price. It would better benefit the United States if we had trade relations with Iran. Now, you said diplomatic relations. That's really the crown jewel of this whole thing.
Yeah.
We haven't had an Iranian embassy in Washington since 1980. And of course, there hasn't been an American embassy in Tehran since the Iranians invaded it and took our diplomats hostage in 1979. So, I don't know. The Arabs always say, let's wait and see. We'll see what happens. But I think it's very positive. Yeah, and I'm going to blow my own horn here. I said months ago that just like only Nixon could go to China, Only Trump can make peace with Iran. I really believe it.
And do you think, what about you mentioned Netanyahu. Obviously, the Israelis hate that. They don't want the U.S. to have anything to do with Iran except to drop bombs on them. So, so are they freaking out behind the scenes? Are they exerting pressure? Is
Netanyahu
going nuts?
Netanyahu called an emergency cabinet meeting on Sunday because he was so upset that there was good news coming out of these talks in Rome. And there was talk about Israel bombing Iran unilaterally. And apparently that was the debate on Sunday, and cooler heads prevailed, and Netanyahu
that's kind of Trump's thing, right? Like, he tries to make peace between Russia and Ukraine, and then he's got France and Germany and the UK interfering with him, cock blocking him there, and then he's got the Israelis up his ass when he's trying to make peace with Iran. I mean, it's like there's always some jerk who's trying to get involved in something just that's kind of not their business.
The South Koreans and the Japanese when he was talking to the North Koreans.
Right.
There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like the policy. Always.
Yeah, there's so many people who really hate peace.
Yeah. Every defense contractor.
Right. So that is good news. Let's hope it. The only thing I worry about with this president is he comes off as he's kind of an ADHD president. It's hard for him to focus on anything, and diplomacy is hard, right?
Yeah,
it takes a certain calm temperament, consistent temperament. It's underappreciated, the accomplishment that Bill Clinton had with the Dayton Peace Accords. It's certainly well appreciated how hard it was for Carter at Camp David.
That's right.
But it doesn't happen much. No. American presidents don't really broker these kind of deals very often. No. We just sort of go in heavy and bomb things, and then everything falls apart, and that's like we walk away and then just leave the steaming pile of rubble.
It's like the Good Friday Accords. I mean, the only reasons why the Good Friday Accords happened and have stuck in Northern Ireland is the fact that we are as close as we are to the British, but we have so many Irish immigrants here in the United States that they've attained positions of real authority. I mean, elected positions. In the case of George Mitchell, he was the Senate Majority Leader and the lead negotiator. But those kinds of situations are very unusual.
By the way, parenthetically, I never understood what was in it for the Irish. They didn't get much, right? No. They got some representation, more representation in the British Parliament.
Yeah.
But they still don't have a unified Ireland. No. Any child who looks at a map doesn't understand what's with this Northern Ireland thing belonging to England.
I was there in late January, I think it was, in Belfast, and then in Dublin, and I was surprised at how little the Northern Irish, at least how little the Irish Catholics got.
Yeah,
there's no fighting, which is great, and then to hear some of the stories, that's it. That's all they got.
They got an end to the struggle, but I guess basically they lost.
Yeah. This Iran thing, though, it's very, very early in the process, so we can't really jump to any conclusions. But I didn't expect this from Donald Trump, not at the very beginning of his administration. So I think that there probably is something to this notion that he really, really wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He's furious that Barack Obama got it for doing nothing and didn't deserve it.
True.
So maybe he's really serious about, solving what arguably is our biggest foreign policy problem. And let me add one other thing. We bombed Yemen over the weekend and killed 74 people in one strike. You know that Iran's support for the Houthis is going to be a major talking point in these negotiations, but the Houthis have not come up. So far, it's just bilateral between the United States and Iran. If we see some progress there, like real progress, maybe then we can turn to Lebanon, Hamas, Yemen.
The axis of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is going to be, I guess, with friendlier relations. good
with friendlier relations. And can you imagine if we didn't have to spend money on the implements of war, either side or any of the multilateral sides? Can you imagine the good works that could be done?
No
things
doubt.
things like hospitals and economic development. It would be a new world,
and it would be pretty quick too.
I think it would be.
I mean, that's kind of like the subject of my new book, which comes out May 1st. Can't buy it yet, so I won't pimp it too much, lest people get too excited and then they forget about it. But yeah, but basically, it's a brain exercise. I take the federal budget, and then I just it's not even a revolution. It's like you move everything around, and it's amazing when you're just like. So I started with the idea we'll basically just do what Brazil, which is about the same size as the United States, does with their defense, and they just defend Brazil, right? Nothing else. So if you use that amount of money, and then you take the rest and you give it to free college and Medicare for all, and universal basic high income, as Elon Musk calls it, unlimited unemployment for people who you can't find a job in 13 weeks. That's okay, no worries, we got your back. You do all that. It's a whole different world. I mean, the amount of money that goes into the war budget it's beyond staggering. Extravagant. Yeah,
it's more than $1 trillion.
Yeah, and if you count all the it's 1.6 if you count all the interest payments on previous wars.
That's right.
I remember my mom, we were watching, I was 12 years old, watching the evacuation from Saigon, and them pushing the Hueys off the decks of the aircraft carriers into the ocean, and burning $100 bills on the roofs of American buildings so that they wouldn't fall into the hands of the communists. And my mom said, "We're going to be paying for this shit for the rest of your life," and we are. We really are. By the way, speaking of which, before we move on, I don't know if I'm catching you a little bit by surprise here, but I don't know. I just saw this story. The Trump administration, it's going to be in a few days, the 50th anniversary of the Vietnamese victory, reunifying Vietnam.
I was invited to Hanoi.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Are you going?
No, it's like next week. I just couldn't do it.
So I'm sure you heard this story. The Trump administration had previously not had anything to say about it, but I guess the calendar crept up on them, and they're like, wait, we kind of don't want anyone to go or talk about this at all. The implications are obvious. It was a brutal defeat. Yeah, we got our asses kicked. By a bunch of guys in black pajamas, and they won fair and square. It's sort of as Ho Chi Minh had always warned they would. And so, so basically it just seems like the Trump administration thinks they can deprive oxygen from this news story by not attending. I don't think it's going to work. The whole world is looking at this. The whole world. Especially the timing of it, because of Trump being in there now. That is right. I think it would have been like maybe smarter for Trump to go. After all, he didn't fight in that war. He's not John McCain. He could have gone over there, and John McCain went to Vietnam. John McCain probably would go to the ceremony. Yeah, he probably would. He had made trips to Vietnam as he was one of the first. Yes. And so he went. So I'm not a John McCain fan by any means, but I think Donald Trump would look bigger if he went over there and gave them a high five and said, "Hey, congrats on your country." Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And isn't it great we're friends now? Yes. Thanks for putting this behind you. Yeah. And I mean, Americans go as tourists every day. Mm-hmm. They're treated great. It's not something that Americans can say about people visiting their country, like these two German girls who arrived in Honolulu a couple days ago, and basically were treated like enemies of the state. 18 and 19 years old. They were arrested, strip searched, treated really abysmally. And it's kind of like, I was reading the comments from MAGA world about this, there was reason for ICE to be, or Border and Customs Protection to be concerned about these two girls, because they didn't have their entire trip booked. That's required. It's like, since when? No,
Since
it's not.
when?
Or lots of countries that's the case. No, it's not true.
No.
You know, at most, sometimes they ask one hotel that you're staying at, and you can just say whatever on your entry form.
Oh yeah, just put Hilton.
Yeah. Cancun Hilton.
Right.
They don't. I mean, what are they going to do? Turn you away? Call
Right.
the hotel? Is it really true? You know, John Kiriakou is staying there. I mean, they don't. They don't care. It's like it's not like visiting the former Soviet Union.
You know, the thing is, those of us on the left, we're happy to bitch about this kind of thing. You know, we shouldn't be turning away 18 and 19-year-old German tourists who are going to come here and spend money and stay in youth hostels or Airbnbs or whatever. We shouldn't. It's a bad look. But besides being a bad look, we're doing real damage to the U.S. tourism industry.
We are.
Real damage, because it's not just these two German girls. It's thousands, tens of thousands of people. We're seeing, for example, the German government 2 weeks ago issue a travel advisory for the United States, warning German citizens, you might not want to go to the United States. They're locking everybody up, right? The Canadians, same thing. The city of Palm Springs, California, put up signs or banners on the lampposts, welcome Canadians, because Canadians now are boycotting the United States. And they're like, please don't boycott us. You're welcome in
Yeah, but to get to Palm Springs, they have to get through LAX or whatever.
That's right.
So no,
I mean, this is not good at all. Not at all.
No, you're right. It has major implications. I mean, a story like that gets out, that's a tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars story.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So
I'm worried about it. Yeah, I really am.
It's like we're in danger of becoming mini North Korea here, or South Africa under apartheid.
You know, I got to tell you too. I've traveled a lot. I know you have too. I've been to 72 countries, and looking back on even some of the worst countries in the world, I was never treated like that ever.
Right.
I've been to Somalia and Djibouti and Yemen 5 times. I mean, even like Saudi Arabia, which is famously anti-tourist. I've never been treated like that anywhere I've been.
I've never been strip searched. I have been detained. My worst experiences were Israel. I was detained for about 4 to 6 hours, two times, because of my passport stamps to countries like Afghanistan. It was interesting because I cooled my heels with a bunch of like young Palestinian men from, New Jersey who were just trying to get home. But that they still didn't strip search me. It was annoying as hell. They didn't jail me.
Right.
I know what you mean though. Yeah.
The only time I was ever treated rudely, like outwardly rudely, was in Delhi. That was it. By an immigration official.
Oh, I was treated rudely in Saudi Arabia upon arrival. We were all treated rudely. They saw the plane lands. We all line up, and they all dipped and went to lunch for 2 hours and let us stew in the waiting area instead of stamping us in. And they were all laughing about it.
Bastard.
That's
a very Saudi thing to do.
Yeah, they're just like pricks.
When I was stationed in Bahrain, I used to drive over to Saudi Arabia all the time, about once a month. My then wife and I would take our son. I only had one child at the time. Take our son. We go over in the morning. We have lunch. We walk around the mall. We go to the souk. We have dinner, and we drive back. So we did that, I'm going to say, a dozen times. Bahrain's connected to Saudi Arabia by a bridge called the Causeway. And then my wife went home to deliver our second son. So I was in Bahrain by myself. It was turnover period in the embassy. And so there were like 4 new officers that transferred into the embassy, and all 4 happened to be women. So somebody said, oh, John goes to Saudi Arabia all the time. Why don't you talk to him? He'll drive you over. And I said, sure, I'll drive you to Saudi Arabia. Women weren't allowed to drive there. Mm-hmm. So we sent a diplomatic note over to the Saudi embassy and said, Second Secretary Kiriakou wants to take these new officers to Tehran for the day, and Al Khobar and Dammam, and they're going to go to the mall and go to the restaurant and come back. Denied. So we asked for an explanation. I had been to Saudi Arabia a dozen times in the past year. So what's up? They said that because I was taking all women, they were afraid that I was acting as their pimp. Can you imagine? They put this in a diplomatic note.
That's insane.
And I said, okay, payback time. Payback time, because the consular officer was going on vacation. And guess who the backup consular officer was? It was me. So I walked in to the consular section that next morning, and I said, listen, the 2 weeks that I'm consular, we reject all Saudis. And they were like, hey, cool. Because Saudis are dicks anyway when they go to get a visa. So my policy, John's policy, no Saudis get a visa. I go to the window. Literally the very first guy at my window is a Saudi guy. And I was rude. I was like hostile. What's the purpose of your visit to the United States? And the guy goes, oh, my 6-year-old son, he was burned in a kitchen fire, and I'm taking him for skin graft operations at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Oof. And he's crying. Oof. I was like, oh, all right, here's your visa. Doggone it. But anyway, I told the ambassador, I said I was ready to screw every Saudi that came to the line. Because technically, we're not really even supposed to give Saudis visas in Bahrain. They're supposed to drive to Riyadh, but Riyadh is like 2.5 hours and Bahrain is a half an hour. So they just come to Bahrain. And we're just trying to be nice guys. So we just do the visas there. So I said, no more visas. So he said, well, I appreciate that, you didn't want to give them the visas. I'm going to call the Saudi ambassador. I'm going to complain. So he did. He called the Saudi ambassador, who complained. And then the Saudi ambassador called me and apologized. And our visas are waiting for us. And so, beside that one little kerfuffle, the only time anybody was ever rude to me was the Indians. But one of the things I learned is that the Indians hate themselves. They're rude to each other. So it wasn't that they just didn't like me.
I have had some sketchy. I mean, you were on a higher level traveling. I was independent journalist, and so
with a backpack or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, I had some very corrupt border guards in Tajikistan and Turkmenistan shake me down for bribes.
Of course, I got that in Pakistan.
That kind of thing that happened all the time. The Chinese. Oddly, when I was exiting one time, they got very upset about my copy of Somerset Maugham's On Human Bondage,
Why?
Which it was a Penguin edition. It had like it had sort of a vaguely socialist realist painting on the cover, and they wanted to know all about this book. And I'm like, and it's this young party cadre, like this 21-year-old girl. And she's going on, and I'm trying to explain. She's very confused. We're in Xinjiang, right? We're in the ass end of China.
Right.
And so she's like, finally, I'm like, we're going on and on. I'm trying to explain it to her. Like, tell me what this book is. What is it about?
Yeah.
And finally, I'm like, listen, I'm taking this subversive, horrible literature out of China. So what's the problem? And she sort of looks at me and she's like, you're right. Just go. Because I was like, I don't understand. I'm like, you can burn it up. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
do whatever you want. Knock yourself out.
Yeah, I mean, great book, by the way. But oh my God.
Yeah, I was in Kuwait in 1993, and I flew from Kuwait to Damascus. And I had been out in the desert with a bunch of guys, and I found an Iraqi helmet where I picked it up because it had a bullet hole through it. And a guy had been writing his name. He had written the first half of Ahmed.
Oh my God.
Carving it, scratching it into and then there's a bullet hole, and he didn't finish writing his name.
Oh, Jesus.
So I picked it up for a souvenir.
Right.
And then I flew to Damascus. And I didn't know that there's like an international law on war booty. You can't
I didn't know that.
It's illegal for me to pick up the helmet and take it.
Really? I brought back some anti-aircraft shells from Afghanistan.
Oh my God, I have all kinds of stuff. All kinds. I even have a black beret from the Revolutionary Guard or the Republican Guard. So the customs guy in Damascus, he opens my suitcase, he sees the helmet. He's like, "What is this? This is war booty. This is a violation of international law." I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know." And his boss heard him shouting, so he came over and he says, "Passport," like that. And I gave him my black diplomatic passport. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. And then he turns to the other guy and he says, "You idiot. You never check the passport of a diplomat." And then he says, "I'm sorry, sir. Enjoy Syria." I said, "Thank you so much."
So you still
And
have
that was the end of it.
You still have the helmet?
No, when I got arrested, I sold it at auction to pay my lawyers.
Oh, all right. Well,
what are you
priorities?
Yeah.
That is sad, but yeah, nevertheless.
We really got off topic.
We did. Let's keep going. We were supposed to. So, what do you want to talk about? Shall we talk about the state? What's going on? Marco Rubio's shenanigans at the State Department?
Yeah, Ted, you and I both have been around long enough to know that Marco Rubio is not smart enough to pull this off on his own.
No.
What Marco Rubio is doing is he's in the process of zeroing out specific offices within the State Department. It's unclear whether he can legally do that or whether he needs passage of an authorization bill by Congress, which probably won't be coming.
Right.
But what he's doing is
it will never make it through the Senate.
Not a chance. It could squeak by the House by a vote or two.
So he's
but
trying to get
no prayer.
For some reason, they're really trying to get rid of Africa stuff.
They're going to get rid of Africa stuff and anything having to do with human rights. But the State Department has a human rights bureau, DRL, Democracy, Labor, and Human Rights is what it's called. And they're the ones who put together the human rights reports every year, right? Every embassy in the world with which, every country in the world with which we have diplomatic relations appoints an officer as the human rights officer. I did it twice in Bahrain. And you write the human rights report, send it back to DRL, and then they present it as this big, I mean, it's a book like this. They present it to Congress. It's congressionally mandated. It has been since 1977. And then all of a sudden, nope, everybody's fired. So we'll see where that goes.
So this, I mean, you know, I smell the stank of Doge here, right? I mean, that's all this is, right? Or am I wrong?
You are right. This is Doge. And it's also part of that, how should I say it? Part of that overarching but detail-free order to just get rid of everybody who works on something that Donald Trump doesn't like.
So, I mean,
I don't know.
A lot of these employees, right? They have contracts. They have, some of them are represented by labor unions.
Yes.
They can't, I mean, so the thing is, it's kind of like, why aren't more of these people refusing to leave?
Yeah.
Why aren't they saying, you want to fire me, you're going to have to arrest me. I'm not, like, there's no resistance. People are just packing up their banker's boxes and going home. I mean, is that just a cultural thing because they're, I
think so. And we have not had
they're not rebels.
Yeah, we have not had a federal layoff since 1979. And even that was very specifically targeted. I mean, nobody knows what it's like to be laid off with the government. You know, I remember when I was at the agency.
But they know it's coming now. I mean,
they know it's coming now, and they need to prepare, and they're not preparing. When I was at the agency, it was some recession, whatever recession there was, like around 1990, 91, whatever. I forget.
Well, I remember it well because I graduated from college in 1991.
See,
and Columbia canceled its jobs fair because not one employer was interested in recruiting my class.
Wow, that hurts. But my point, though, is I didn't even know that was happening because I never had to worry about any slowdown in the economy. I worked for the government. I literally
that was the slowdown that cost George H.W. Bush his re-election campaign.
That's right. That's exactly right. But it never occurred to me to pay attention to economic news because it never impacted me in any way.
But everyone in the Beltway, they're well aware of Elon, and
oh boy,
and you know how it is. Elon's brief is about to expire, and just like in the closing days of Nazi Germany, the enemy is strongest just before the end, right? So
yeah, that's right. These CIA people, the 17 CIA people who were fired, I'm going to say, 5-6 weeks ago?
yeah.
They were staffing the CIA's DEI programs, and they were escorted to their cars. Their badges were taken. They were told not to come back, fired. We talked about this on the show. We said it was the first, layoffs, I guess, so to speak, since 79. Well, they sued, and a judge reinstated all of them. Good. So nobody's really getting fired yet. And again, we don't really know how this is going to play out at state. You cannot shut down the Human Rights Office. You can't.
Right.
You don't have the legal authority to do it. So what are you going to do? You're going to, at least temporarily, I would think, transfer these people to something else. Put them in the bureau.
And they might be hoping that, like,
money and coinage.
I think that, like, deep down, Elon and the gang, they're hoping that, like, okay, well, we fuck with these people. A lot of them will end up drifting off and finding some other job, and then we'll be rid of them, and we don't have to replace them by attrition. But the thing is, right now, even though unemployment is technically low, so is hiring. Mm-hmm. There are no jobs. Right. So for these people to go to, so even if there's not going to be, some people will drift off, but not very many. I think in the end, the Department of Governmental Efficiency is going to end up costing the Treasury millions and millions of dollars in, like, legal fees and, like, retraining. And in the end, it's going to be a net negative.
I think so too. There are ways to shrink the federal workforce. You just said, just don't backfill people who retire.
Yeah.
Right? Just let the slots disappear. Mm-hmm. And that way everybody's happy, everybody keeps his job, but you really are shrinking the workforce. You can't just go in and say, everybody in this office is fired. Everybody get out right now. But what is that? That's not leadership.
Well, yeah, and it's not legal.
I
would like to see some I know that it's, like, a lot to expect some of these sort of Poindexters to, chain themselves to their desks and start screaming, singing, nobody knows the trouble I've seen, but they're not going to. It's just not, temperamentally, it's not their way.
Do you remember Daniel Ho? He was, I don't remember if he was in the Army or the Marine Corps, a Korean-American guy. He was an absolutely gifted Arabic linguist. And he also just happened to be gay. And he was fired from the military at a period where they really, really needed Arabic translators. And they fired him because he was gay. And so he chained himself to the White House fence.
Oh, okay. This is vaguely familiar.
And he single-handedly brought down Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Brought it down.
That's awesome.
So sometimes, desperate times call for desperate measures, and you can actually have an impact and get change implemented.
Yeah.
Just like he did.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Well, now he might just be shot, but left hanging there.
Yeah, true.
Should we talk about the Pentagon?
Let's talk about the Pentagon.
Our most qualified Secretary of Defense. So it turns, of course, it comes as no surprise that there was another signal chat. I'm sure that where there were two, there are 3 and 4 and 5. It's just going to keep coming out. At some, Trump is trying hard to hang on, but at the same time, you've got obviously mad leaking taking place out of the Pentagon. And it's all over the New York Times, Washington Post, NBC News, where it's like basically everyone's very unhappy working. They say that he's completely unqualified. His team doesn't know what the hell it's doing.
His team's falling apart. And more so than in any other department, there is zero loyalty. So what's happening is you've got a guy who is Secretary of Defense who is so far in over his head, he doesn't even know where to begin. And he made the stupid mistake of surrounding himself with people who know even less about defense than he does. And then when they start turning on each other, for bureaucratic favor, he just fires them all. Well, in the meantime, your 3- and 4-star generals are looking at this like, what the heck is going on here? Oh, yeah, you don't like it? You're fired too. And he gets rid of 2 of the 5 service chiefs. Is that what it was? Yeah. So no, it's chaos at the Pentagon, to the point where even Republicans are saying now that Hegseth needs to get his act together, or the guy's not going to last another 30 days, which is what everybody predicted anyway.
True. I mean, actually, you could say he's past his expiration date already. It's right now. I mean, Trump's instinct is always to say that he supports his dudes no matter what,
right?
Until he doesn't.
Until he doesn't. Exactly.
So
exactly.
I mean, he's not. But Hegseth's not going to be the sec def in a year, right?
Absolutely not. In fact, I heard from a very highly placed Republican. I mean, like highly placed, one of the party's leaders, that everybody acknowledges Hegseth is not long for this administration, and that it's going to be Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay. And how do people feel about her?
The Republicans think she's the greatest. I like Tulsi.
It's so bizarre when you think about like where she was in the political firmament, 5 years ago. She was basically considered a socialist.
Yeah, which is why the Democrats hated her so much.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very. I mean, I've been saying for a long time that we're in the middle of this weird political realignment, especially on foreign policy. But nothing illustrates it like that. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, now is she smart enough? I mean, she's smarter than Pete Hegseth, but I mean, that's not saying much. Is she smart enough to do this job? Does she have the administrative chops to do this job? Because, that's the issue here, right? 3.5 million employees.
Yeah, 3.5 million employees.
The biggest employer on planet Earth.
Yeah, that's right. And, she ran a congressional office with 12 employees. I mean, she's a colonel in the Army, for what that's worth. So was Hegseth, or he was a major, maybe.
Hegseth was
Captain.
A major.
Yeah, something like that. So no, I mean, the easy answer is no. She has no idea what it's like to run a company with 3.5 million employees and a $1 trillion budget. No,
right?
No, but a real leader, a true leader, knows to surround him or herself with smart people who do know what they're doing.
Will she be smart enough to not have the ego that require, so to basically seek the knowledge, the institutional knowledge that she needs in order to delegate those responsibilities?
I don't know. I don't know what her view is of the uniformed service leaders, the uniformed service chiefs. There seems to be this hatred that Hegseth has for them. It's like he and Trump were targeting everybody with 4 stars and then elevating these 3 stars who are much more willing to just say, yes, sir, Mr. President, than the 4 stars. I used to say this all the time too. And I actually wrote an op-ed about this once, where for things like ODNI or director of CIA, I don't think that person should ever be a current or former general or admiral. Because how do you get to be a general or admiral? By saying for 35 years, yes, sir, and doing as you're told. But in those positions, you need somebody who can say, Mr. President, that is a terrible idea. Let me explain why. And I don't think Hegseth has that.
It's an unusual skill set, though. I mean, I know obviously something people who are outside of the military are unaware that there's just tons and tons of civilians who work for the military. My father was one of them. But it's sort of like, it's an unusual skill set, like a Donald Rumsfeld, someone who knows the Pentagon from the inside out, but has not served in uniform that way.
Do you remember Les Aspin?
Of course, yeah.
So Les Aspin was a longtime Democratic congressman from Wisconsin, I think. And he was the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. And I remember in Washington, this was 1992, 1993, nobody knew as much about the Pentagon, and especially the Pentagon budget, as Les Aspin. And so as soon as Bill Clinton's elected president, he names Les Aspin Secretary of Defense. He was one of the worst secretaries of defense that we have ever had. And I'll tell you one little aside in a second. He lasted 12 months and then he resigned and nobody ever heard from him again. One of the things, he used to decline his morning PDB briefing, the president's daily brief. And at the CIA, they were very, very concerned that the Secretary of Defense is declining the briefing.
Why? Was he just lazy?
He was car sick. So what the CIA briefers always do is they'll meet the principals at their homes, brief in the car on their way to the office, and then a CIA car picks them up and takes them back to the CIA. But he can't read he couldn't read in the car because he would throw up.
That's like my ex-wife.
He was embarrassed. My brother was like that. So he was embarrassed to say, if I read the PDB, I'm going to throw up. And so he just started declining it. And then finally the president's like, look, you got to read this thing. You can't be the only one in the cabinet, in the national security cabinet.
Couldn't the CIA guy like read it to him like while they're riding in the car?
That's what they ended up doing. The CIA guy just brought the briefing book and just read to him article after article after article. Crazy. But let me ask you, this second leak that you started this segment with, not only has there been this second leak, not only has Hegseth revealed classified information on Signal, but his wife was on the call.
Right.
And his personal attorney, neither of whom have any kind of security clearance.
No business being on there.
So obviously and clearly a violation of the Espionage Act. Does Trump let it stand, or is this the beginning of the end for Hegseth?
I mean, this might be the strike 3 system for Trump. The baseball reigns supreme. I've got to think. I mean, if Trump has any. He's got to have his doubts. He knows that this was a poor choice. He had to know it was a poor choice from the beginning, though. That's the part that's so mysterious.
Everybody in the country said it was a poor choice.
Yeah. Plus,
everybody.
Plus, he's like putting, he's dipping his wee where it's not supposed to go. He drinks like a fish. He's a fuck up.
Yeah, he's got the white supremacist tattoos.
Yeah, the sketchy neo-Nazi tattoo, white nationalist, let's just say. Hello.
Yeah.
It's really weird too, because that's not who Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is, for all of his faults, very self-contained. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke. He's careful. He believes in that after what happened to his brother. So he doesn't really like people who are wild and crazy like Hegseth. So it's weird to me that he trusted that guy.
He's been very public about it too, because his brother drank himself to death. Fred, right? It was Fred Jr.
Right. Yeah,
drank himself to death, and so Donald Trump has never been one to drink, never, and he doesn't like when other people drink.
Right. So
and
it's weird
Hegseth
to me that
drinks like a fish. So I don't know. I
think we're on Hegseth, death watch here.
I think so too.
But then there's the question is how long does Tulsi last? Look, she's obviously an improvement, but is she up to the task? I don't know.
What was it that came out the other day? It was a national intelligence estimate. Oh, I know what it was. So all 18 intelligence services that make up the U.S. intelligence community came out with an NIE, a national intelligence estimate. This is the highest level finished analysis in the American government. It is the coordinated view of every agency in the intelligence community. And they came out and said that there is zero evidence that the government of Venezuela has anything to do with this Venezuelan gang that the president has said has been sent to this country to, rape and pillage and murder and cause all kinds of mayhem. Zero evidence. Well, NIEs are commissioned through the Director of National Intelligence. So usually it's the president will have a question. I wrote an NIE one time. That's how I got my GS-15. The question was, what did the next 12 months look like in Iraq? And this was in 1990, 7.
Mm.
So it was the president had the question. It went to the CIA director. Now it goes to the director of national intelligence. It comes from the president, or it could also come from the national security advisor. So this one came from the national security advisor to Tulsi Gabbard. What are the ties between the government of Venezuela and this gang?
Tren de Aragua.
Tren de Aragua. Thank you. I couldn't remember it. And the answer is there are no ties.
No.
And the statement that Tulsi released made me actually laugh out loud. She's like, this is deep state bullshit. This is an attempt to overthrow the government of Donald Trump. It's like, it was as though Trump made the statement. Maybe
That's hilarious.
Trump did the statement. But, I mean, what's that do for morale in the intelligence community? I had to laugh. Because it was exactly the opposite of what Tulsi and Waltz and Trump at all.
It's just like how the Bush administration threw the CIA under the bus over Iraq and WMDs. The CIA made us do it. Well, they didn't. The CIA told you it wasn't true. Because if you'd listened to the CIA, you wouldn't have gone in.
I remember when that happened, like yesterday, where George Tenet went to see Condi Rice, and he said, Condi, you know that you're the one who said they had WMD, and I said they didn't. And she said to him, and he bitched about this for weeks. She said, George, you're just going to have to take one for the team.
Oof. That was the Bush way. That's what they did to Colin Powell when they sent him up to the UN.
That's right.
Show your loyalty. You'd be jumped into the gang.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought this up about the Tren de Aragua, because I'm writing my column this week about among the highlight is on the way that the administration is abusing the Alien Enemies Act of 1952, and
yes.
And basically what the Trump administration is alleging in sworn papers in front of federal judges, they're saying, look, the act only applies to you can only throw people out in the course of an invasion during a state of war, right? Well, we haven't been in a state of war really since 1945, declared war. So
that's right.
The last time the Alien Enemies Act was used was to intern and deport Japanese and Italian and some German Americans, and during under FDR, right? The famous internment camps. About 2/3 of the Japanese who were sent to those camps were U.S. citizens, but about 1/3 were like the equivalent of green card holders. And so the law was used for them. And you would think that after, and this is my thesis here, you would think that after a law was used in such a disgusting, abusive way that we have recognized since the late 1980s was wrong, and we issued reparations and issued a formal apology from Congress that Reagan signed into law, that this law would have been repealed, right?
That's right.
Or at least seriously amended.
That was due to a writ of coram nobis.
So it's really it's crazy, and
it's very rare.
But anyway, so the Trump administration's arguing, well, we can use this law because we're in the matter because this is an invasion, and the reason it's an invasion is because Tren de Aragua has been deputized formally and ordered by the Venezuelan government, the nation state of Venezuela, the Republic of Venezuela. They have said, we're sending you, Tren de Aragua, go and invade the United States. Now, you and I both know, John, when the Congress wrote that law in the McCarthy era, when they were thinking of an invasion, they were thinking of something that looked like the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. They were not thinking of like gangbangers, like, sneaking into the country and selling Lucy's on the street or whatever the fuck they're doing.
And who may or may not have objectionable hand tattoos.
Right. So that's not what they were thinking. So, I mean, so the thing is that this question, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to assess this, right? They're already having to assess the games that the administration is pulling, stonewalling on this case of this guy that they admit that they sent to El Salvador for no reason. But like now they're going to have to again tease out these questions, right? Is Tren de Aragua engaged in invasion? are they working for the Venezuelan government or at the orders of the Venezuelan government? The answer to all these questions is no. Are we at a state of war? No.
No.
But like under the meaning of the law, no. Under the, these are originalists, right? They're going to look at what Congress had in mind in 1952. The answer is going to be no. For them, they're thinking about what it looked like when North Koreans crossed the parallel into South Korea. That's an invasion. So it's like, I mean, is the U.S. Supreme Court going to finally grow a pair? And I mean, it seems to be signaling that they are increasingly displeased with the administration.
Yeah. In fact, it was just Alito the other day who objected to the court's decision on this Venezuela issue. And his objection was only that the decision was taken in the middle of the night.
Right.
That was his only objection.
Yeah.
Well, why'd we have to make this decision in the middle of the night? We couldn't talk about it in the morning?
So well, no, because they were about to send those people off. And it is a remarkable rebuke to Alito that that the majority, either 7-2 or 8-1, depending on how you count it, decided like, yeah, we're not good. Sam, you work on your thing. We know you're keeping bankers' hours.
Yeah, that's right.
No late nights for you. But we're sending this out right away because we know basically it's tacit. They know what the Trump administration is on about. They know that they're trying to get them out before the courts can react.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, so it does seem, I mean, I think it looks to me like the Trump administration is going to lose that court battle.
I think
they're going to have to bring that guy back.
Yeah.
And this Alien Enemies Act thing writ large is also probably going to be thrown out because, I mean, it's total bullshit.
Yes, it is indeed.
I mean, why does the administration think, I mean, it's one thing to stretch. Like, I always thought it was ridiculous to argue that Guantanamo was in some kind of like legal netherworld where like it's not Cuba. It's not the United States. It's nowhere. It's like the high seas. It's nowhere. It's like, really? So like if one soldier shoots another soldier at Guantanamo because he doesn't like the cut of his jib, really, you don't prosecute him because there's no law there.
It's
like,
a no man's land.
That's not true.
No,
and like it's U.S. territory. It's under U.S. jurisdiction. It's under U.S. control, like an embassy, like a military base anywhere in the world.
That's right.
So that I always thought that was absurd, and eventually, I guess, in the Hamda decision, right?
That's right.
The court came around. So that's going to happen here, right? I mean, it's going to.
I think so too. I think it's going to happen. Society wants to return to an equilibrium, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have turmoil all the time. People just won't stand for it. We have to return to some sort of an equilibrium.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's I'm sure you've taken note of the latest polls. The only thing more unpopular than the Trump administration is the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But the Trump administration is really, they're falling out of favor. And what voters are telling pollsters is they don't like the chaos.
Yes.
They don't like how uncertain everything is. People wanted change, but they didn't want mayhem.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you a quick question too. I admit to you that even though I am a sports fan, I don't ever watch ESPN. I don't know why. I just don't. I never have, never got into it. I love football, love baseball, like to go see hockey, but I never watch ESPN. The Washington Post this week had an article about this guy. I think his last name might be Williams, African-American guy, who Democrats are now starting to talk about as a potential presidential candidate.
Oh, right. Yes.
You know who I'm talking about?
A. Williams or something?
That's it.
Stephen A. Miller.
Miller. That's it. Yeah.
Very close to Stephen Miller.
And they
but not Stephen Miller.
Right.
Or Stephen Miller from the band, from the Steve Miller band. That's
the Steve Miller band. Right. No. And I recognize him just from flipping through the Stephen A. Smith. Thank you.
Stephen A. Smith, right.
Stephen A. Smith. But he's appearing on CNN, he's appearing on MSNBC to talk about political issues. And he's actually very good.
Yeah.
He knows what he's talking about. He has a well thought out idea, analysis. But seriously, I mean, is this where we are now, where we're looking to ESPN anchors to run the country? But you look at these polls, the Democrats are polling 27%, Ted. 27%.
It's insane.
Pete Buttigieg is not going to save us.
No. Although
and I say us, meaning the country, not the Democrats.
He will likely be the nominee, but he's not.
Oh my God!
I think he's the. I would favor him to be the nominee at this point if the decision had to be made now. I think he'd probably get it for a variety of reasons. Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of there's periodic Democratic flailing. There's always a desire, a lust for a celebrity candidate, right?
Yes.
Like Oprah or Michelle Obama, like,
right.
And somehow, it's interesting. Now that I didn't occur to me, they tend to be black.
That actually hadn't occurred to me either.
That's kind of good. I guess that's kind of good.
Yeah, sure.
But still, it's interesting. It's kind of like, oh, we'll be saved by a celebrity. It's like, well, but not. I mean, Donald Trump was a celebrity, but he was a particular kind of celebrity. Mm-hmm. He was a political celebrity who also was in the world of entertainment. I mean, Stephen A. Smith, he's too new. I mean, it's just what it is. I don't really take anything away from Stephen A. Smith. To me, the takeaway is it's a reflection of just how desperate the Democratic Party is.
And that's the word.
There's no bench.
Yeah, no. And we said that 2 years ago. There's no bench. And the Republicans actually have a deep bench.
They do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, okay, Amy Klobuchar, she has, it's the Peter principle. She has achieved beyond her level. That's it. She doesn't get to be president.
No.
I think Pete Buttigieg, I would argue the same thing. Maybe
I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but he should
Gavin
not be
Newsom has he's an illustration of the Peter principle.
Yes.
I don't see, who else they got. I mean, Cory Booker, I don't think he has that certain. I always thought he was an interesting figure, but I don't think he has that it factor.
No. How about the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette ran an article saying Mark Cuban needs to run. It's got to be Mark Cuban. It's like, and Mark Cuban's like, leave me out of this. I'm not
always
interested.
The celebrity.
Always.
And
they said, well, if he doesn't run for president, maybe he can buy the Pirates and make them a winning team.
Well, here, I have an idea for the Democratic Party, and this one's free. I won't even charge you guys if you're watching over at the DNC, right? So look at the party that's been winning, the Republicans. What have they been doing for years? Two things that Democrats don't do. First of all, they don't put their thumbs on the scale of their primaries. There's no super delegates. There's if someone emerges from God knows where, like Donald Trump, you just roll with it, even though you don't personally like it. You let your primary voters decide, and that person becomes the nominee, and you fall into line.
That's a great op-ed right there, Ted. That's a great op-ed.
That's the first thing that Republicans do. The other thing that Republicans do is they draw energy from their right flank, from the people to the right of the Republican Party, from the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, but also the future MAGA people who used to be the Tea Party people, the rebels, the people who are the crazies, and the Ann Coulters, all those people. They provide intellectual vigor and energy, and they make sure that you're not just a party, you also have an ideology. The Democrats, however, have killed everyone to the left of centrist Democrats. So you're not allowed to be Bernie or even Elizabeth Warren, who's not really anything other than an old-fashioned Hubert Humphrey liberal, barely.
Barely.
But you're not allowed to be a leftist, a socialist, a communist. You're not even, and what I mean by that is, that doesn't mean you're not even allowed to run for president. It means if you're a leftist, you're not allowed to be in the op-ed page of the New York Times. You're not allowed to be a guest in the afternoon on MSNBC. Those things all used to be true. The Democratic Party used to draw from the New Left in the 1960s. They used to be during the 50s and 40s, the socialists and communists who were to the left. They kind of like they were drawing from that. They were getting the best ideas, the most moderate ideas, and making those electoral ideas. The New Deal, those are all left-wing ideas. I collect political ephemera. if you look, I have all these buttons from the 19 teens and 20s. Communist Party USA.
And they were all viable, like running whole slates. Yeah.
Unemployment insurance, that was a communist idea. So like, the Democratic Party adapted it. It was popular. So I think that's another thing the Democrats should be doing is quit cock blocking your left flank, because you're not getting, Tulsi Gabbard, she had to go over to the Republican Party because the Democrats wouldn't let her go anywhere. They treated her like shit. Bernie Sanders,
exactly what happened.
They fucked him. Donald Trump has repeatedly said, and I believe him, that he was the only Democrat that he was worried about was Bernie. Bernie had
that.
He was a populist. He could beat him.
Yep.
That
is right.
I mean, I think those are the two. Yeah.
Before we wrap things up, I did not know that David Hogg, the kid who was from Parkland, I did not know that he's one of the vice presidents of the DNC.
That's crazy.
Crazy. I saw it in Politico, and he announced that he wants to start running people against some of these old-timer incumbents. It's time for new blood. He's right. It's time for new blood.
He is right about that.
One of the funny things they said
was, it's a gerontocracy for sure.
It is a gerontocracy. And Amy Klobuchar, get this, Amy Klobuchar is the 4th youngest Democratic senator, and she is 67 years old.
That's insane.
Shame on all of them.
Well, it is ridiculous.
Youngest.
But I mean, I will say this to David Hogg, who I know watches the program religiously. David, it's not just about age. Age is part of the equation, but it's also about ideology, and it's like the Democrats don't have a message. So you can get like all the good-looking young influencer future politicians, but if they don't have anything to say because the party won't let them, there's nothing you can do.
That's right. That's right.
So, I mean, the DNC is like, they've got to be reined in. I mean, well, you need a takeover. I mean, I guess they let David Hogg in, but David Hogg's ideology is center. I mean, he's Hillary Clinton.
Except on guns. Yeah, he's a Clinton Democrat. Yeah.
And that's part of the problem here. Like, the revolution will not be revolutionized if it's by David Hogg.
That's right.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. I know you have things to do, John. I do too. Great. Always good. We'll be back on Thursday, same bad station, same bad time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, 12 noon on the West Coast, and you can figure out all the in-betweens. Do tune in here. Watch us on the social media, and thanks for watching DeProgram.
Thanks, everybody.